Hello, everyone. I am ZHAO Chuang. Let's draw the head of Yangchuanosaurus shangyouensis. When drawing the head of Yangchuanosaurus shangyouensis, we must first pay attention to the height-to-width ratio of its entire head and the relatively complex head shape that can be shown from the skull. The horns would appear larger than seen from the fossil because of the extra keratinous structures wrapped outside when it was alive. This would make its head taller and rounder than the fossil. In addition, when we draw it with its mouth closed, we can shape it to have lips with the teeth totally invisible. When it closed its mouth, the teeth of the upper jaw would insert into the lower lip and prop up the skin above this line of the lower jaw. We will use some simple hatching lines to show this. Now, let's draw the head of Yangchuanosaurus shangyouensis. Before drawing, we first determine its position in the picture. Then, we roughly outline its shape. There were two relatively raised structures above its nose, and the highest point behind it was its lacrimal horn. Next, we draw its eye socket, a lump above the eye, and the back of the head tilting backward. We connect these lines. Because this part had keratin, when it was alive, it would appear larger than the bone. Then, we draw its eye. Its eyes were much smaller than the eye sockets. We can draw some folds around it. Next, we complete the top outline of the head. Then, draw an eve-like structure here because the keratin was more raised when it was alive, which also constituted a part of its antorbital fenestra. Now, we draw its nose, using dotted lines to show the soft tissue, and then draw the nostril. Next, we draw the postorbital bone behind the eye, which is a relatively thick bone. And then there would be its jugal bone. Now, let's draw its mouth. Because it had an upper lip, this part would be much thicker. Draw some folds at the corner of the mouth. Then, we draw its lower jaw. The lower jaw looked thinner because of the covering of its upper lip, but the posterior of its lower jaw was thick and muscular. Next, we draw its temporal fenestra, and then use a lighter line to outline the position of the maxilla. Since its teeth were inserted into the lower lip, here on the lower jaw, we use dotted lines to show how the lower lip is propped up to make it look more bulging. Draw some masseter muscles on the cheek. Then, we draw a few rows of scales on the edge of the lip, like bricks. It had a few rows of somewhat small scales above the lip. There is no need to draw the scales covering the entire area. We assume the light is coming from the left, and we only need to draw a little shadow on the lower right. In the part close to the maxilla, the scales can be drawn larger. The scales on the lower jaw can be drawn more vague. Then, we can enhance these scales, using dotted lines to fill in the gaps between each row to make the rows to be integrated as a whole. Then, draw some folds below the lacrimal horn. Followed by an ear. On the lower part of the mandible, we can apply very short lines to draw a small row of shadows. At the top of its neck, there was a small triangular muscle. Now, on its throat, we outline some drooping flesh. Then, draw more folds on both sides of the neck, and some shadows below the neck. Lastly, we draw some large scales on the cheek to make the scales of this animal look richer. In this way, we've finished drawing the head of Yangchuanosaurus shangyouensis.